We've got another episode for you, everybody, of our Succession Success podcast from the Q5 Experience. Matt Dery with you, our marketing and business development man here at Q5. And of course, with the Q5 Experience, we always talk about helping business owners with building their transferable value. Many owners that are out there that are thinking about exiting their business at one point or another don't have a plan and aren't sure where to start. And that's what we help you with at Q5. And you can learn more at q5experience.com. We are starting kind of a series here, and we're on episode 2, Learning from the Experts. We heard from Sarah Greifenberger, Certified Valuation Analyst from Q5 and Arbor Valuation. Today, we talked to, I think, is the best strategic business coach there is when it comes to Southeast Michigan, has his own company, T-Rex Advisory, and of course is the strategic business coach on the Q5 team, Chris Meso. Chris, great to see you.
Matt, always a pleasure to be with you, carving time with you.
Love carving time. I like that, carving time.
Yeah.
Let's do it. But your story's interesting, Chris, because now you're coaching business owners, but your background was as an owner, and you went through the transition planning process. How important is it that you've got that experience and you went through it?
That is a great question. I would share with you, Matt, that how I view it. Everybody has a different lens. My lens would be in talking to some of my buddies as well, who have had companies for decades. I think would also agree that the relevance of living through owning a company and failures, successes, pressures, intended, unintended outcomes, the understanding of these things, combining with a concept of sharing tools, that together is priceless. And it has a higher effect in the room, gives you more value, I think.
Let me ask you this. You sold your company, bought it back, sold it again, and you've told the story to your clients. We've talked about it with Q5 clients and the team, but do you go back and say, man, I wish there was a Q5, I wish there was a T-Rex back when I was kind of going through this transaction? Do you think about that? Does it keep you up at night sometimes?
Well, I hate to ever go back and say I wish, because I want to live in the present,
Sure.
and I want to influence my future. So you could go back, and everybody does go back and say, what could I have done better or different in that respect for the question? And I would say that I actually at one point in time did try to seek out a business coach and to help me by example. And I didn't have one in front of me at that particular time in those circumstances that ran a company. So we never did that. So if I was to go back in time, I would have kept looking, and I would have found somebody that I gelled with, and someone that I could relate to, and somebody who could help me get further faster. We got far. We surely did. We were very successful. We surely were. I'd love to have, if you go back in time, knowing what I know today, I'd love to press on the gas pedal earlier and harder.
It's interesting. I love the concept that you come up with. We had an event uh, in a symposium, I guess you could say, with some owners in the construction space recently at CAM. We love our friends Kevin, Tracy, and the crew at Construction Association of Michigan. But you talked about it a lot about the understanding, knowing what you do not know, and there's so much that
Yeah,
owners do not know, right, Chris? What comes
yeah.
to mind when you talk to fellow owners about what they don't know?
Oh, another fabulous question. The one thing that just comes to mind immediately for me, and so I was speaking with some Vistage groups this week on several days over the week, and one of the things is apparently true, and the concept is most owners, and this was to include me to some extent, not knowing what I didn't know in concept. So the words matter and concepts matter. We didn't really understand, and a lot of business owners don't truly understand the concept of working on the business at a higher level to get your strategic plan coordinated, to understand your value, to understand 10-year plans, 3-year plans, 1-year plans, understand, by Michael Porter speaking, his whole concept on strategy, on what is it that you're actually executing on inside your company in doing. So we're missing the working on the business appropriately and with enough effort and skill set and knowing how to do that, so you can walk into your business the next day and start working in the business. As simple as that sounds, it is a wide margin miss.
Chris Meso with us, strategic business coach for the Q5 Experience, and also his own company, T-Rex Advisory. You mentioned working on the business. Is that specifically what you do when you're able to kind of get your paws and claws into some of these clients? What types of things do you work on with them that you think are so important that they're getting ready, for that owner readiness situation?
Sure. So we're looking at strategic plans, obviously, from the get-go. We're looking at, bringing in a lot of concepts from a lot of great authors in business, explaining these tools and concepts. And in the end, what we're focused on, once we get these definitions down and the language correct, we're working on culture, behaviors, which is really important. And then we're working on a number of value drivers, just like when you were speaking with Sarah Greifenberger, who is surely an expert in this field, with her past history speaks for itself. When you speak with Sarah and you go through evaluation, she specifically is taking time with the owner and the ownership leadership team. And what she's focused on in the metrics is finding all these value drivers that will help to shore up the value gap in this business between the present value and the future value. So there's a lot for an owner to understand and do. And when I'm in the room, this is what I'm locked and loaded on.
How important is this chessboard that you talk about, which is the accountability chart, right? Because
Yeah.
do they have an accountability chart? Do they have at least an outline of something like that? Or do you come in and go, look, we've got to do this and get this down first and foremost?
Unless someone's really been through really good strategic coaching, and here's something that I missed years ago running my company. I wish I would have understood this better, to go back to your earlier question as well. This accountability chart is a chessboard, and how I think about it. A lot of owners, to include me years ago, would have a org chart, organizational chart, and it has no real purpose in terms of longer term thinking, and it has no value in measuring what a seat looks like and what an action from the seat actually is defined to be, so you can measure it. So this chessboard that we're talking about, we call it accountability chart, is almost keys to a kingdom of understanding energy flow inside your business as a business owner and leadership team. So you can actually look at what is it that you need, when do you need it, how do you need it, what level do you need it, and measure that and lead to that.
More with Chris Meso, of course, from Q5 and T-Rex Advisory. I want to ask him about what the Exit Planning Institute is saying about what owners are going through and how they're feeling post sale and transition. We'll do that coming up next right here on Succession Success.
As a business owner, have you ever thought about what it would look like to leave on your terms? In a business, there are too many moving parts to fully understand and implement a practical succession plan while at the same time living inside your own business. Your energy today is focused on running a great company. In the end, don't you want the highest value? Get to the next phase in life on your terms and leave an impactful legacy? We help with that. The Q5 Experience. We help take the I don't know out of what's next.
Back on the podcast, the Q5 Experience podcast, Succession Success, learning from the Q5 experts. We just talked a couple of weeks ago with Sarah Greifenberger on valuation. Today, strategic business coaching with the best in the business, Chris Meso. How much, by the way, Chris, do you just love getting in front of these leadership teams and rolling up your sleeves and going at it for your quarterly meetings? How much passion and drive do you have for this?
Matt, I can't think of doing anything else right now in my period of time in life. So I'm in my early 60s. I retired in my mid 50s. I was completely done. I had everything I ever wanted. And I looked in the mirror and I knew I actually needed more.
Wow.
So being in the room with other business owners and spending that time with them and deriving value, as much value as they're getting, I have seen it charge my batteries and give me value to keep going. And so I'm just so lucky in life to land here and to be with others that I really appreciate.
Didn't you? What about your wife, though? Didn't she? I thought you were retired. What's going on?
Yeah.
That's an interesting conversation to have, right, brother?
Yeah, that was a curveball for probably both of us, because we did talk that I was going to retire, and I just could not for the life of me figure out how to be happy in retirement. And all my buddies would say, "What is wrong with you?"
Right.
And I would say back to them, guys I was hanging out with, "Are you retired?" No, everybody's working. Again, I'm in my mid 50s, and I just thought, I've got so much gas in the tank. I just don't know where the gas is going to go. And I shared that with my wife. I said, I know I said this is what I'm going to do, but here's a curveball, hon. This is what I want to do next.
All right. So Exit Planning Institute came out recently and said 75% of business owners that sell their business have regret selling their business. Why is that? You've been through it. What are you hearing that's out there? And how can that number come down?
It's interesting that you bring that up. I believe, and I'm just going by memory, so 10 years ago, I think, is when they had another larger survey. And that survey by memory could have been 78%. So today's survey, and today being 2023, and I think that was 1,200 business owners that they surveyed. So it's a decent population. It went down to 75% regret. So we moved the needle 3% in 10 years. And this is regret. This is somebody who's worked and just given all they've got for 10, 20, 30, 40 years running a business. You sell a business, and then you have post-mortem regret. How in the world is that possible? To me, Matt, knowing what I know today, it's possible because we just, as business owners, we don't know what we don't know. We've never been through this process, which why, to me, Q5, how we noodled through this and whiteboarded this for years to get it to how is it that we should share? What is that we should share? What is there to learn? When is it? When should you learn it? What should you understand? And to walk somebody through so that regret shouldn't be there when you're done. Can you imagine as a person You put all that time in,
Right.
and then you openly say on a survey, yeah, I regret. Something was really missing. And what we're trying to do is capture all those gaps, make those gaps a game. I'm just referring back to a Dan Sullivan book,
Sure.
The Gap in the Game. There's gaps in understanding, and we're filling those gaps with game so that business owner could understand, could implement, could derive value from.
Interesting. This owner, he or she, sounds like just isn't sure of their sense of purpose after the business is no longer theirs, right? And I know with you worked closely with the behavioral team and the people team at Q5, John and Danette Bell, about this very subject, and something that really owner readiness, that this wasn't out there years ago. How important is that?
Matt, I will say openly, and I kid with John Bell on this, who is our neuroscience arm out of U of M, that is the secret sauce. So there's a lot of tools and concepts that business owners should work on. And again, they're not going to know all these things that they should know because they're busy running a business. But getting back to your question, we are all people, and we need purpose, and we need to understand our intrinsic value as a person. And when you look at the regret, by example, it is so high. We're part of that, and a big population of that, I believe, is missing the understanding of intrinsic value as a person. And I say that not just because of the EPI survey that we're talking about, but there's other surveys from national organizations in the sciences that say the lack of purpose as a society right now is wild high, and that's a problem. And we should understand that, concentrate on that, and affect a change for the better.
Let me ask you about that because you've been through it, and obviously you're dealing with clients on this. When do they know? Okay, so if they say, "Man, I wish Q5 was around years ago," and we've heard that before, but is it a 3 to 5 year thing, 2 to 4 year thing in terms of, hey, you got to get started now on this because, like you said, you were younger, you were in your 50s, but when should they start diving into some of this stuff?
Yeah. If I was to go back in time, I would want the understanding inside my head and to be very vivid, clear in my head that this is a present tense conversation that should be had, not a future tense conversation. So understanding your value drivers, understanding your value gaps, understanding where you're going to land conceptually, when that's going to happen. Isn't that good business planning to incorporate how you're going to land in the future? Landing being, this is how I'm going to get out. How in the world don't we do that? We're just not taught that. And if you're taught that now and you implement it over a number of years, well, you're executing on that in a clearer, better way.
It's wild because it's probably just a transaction for most, right? In terms of, yeah, I'm just going to get out. I'll call my M&A attorney buddy or a CPA and hope for the best. And it's more than that. And not everybody understands that concept.
They don't. And we're using words, Matt, even in our conversation right now. We're using words. What comes to mind when I talk to some of my cohorts out in the investment banking world, in the CPA world, in the financial services world, a lot of people are using exit planning as terms, as words. And when I hear that as a person, and I speak to groups about this now, you're just like you're saying, we're reflected on in our minds. That's a future event. And we've got a lock and load on. That's actually not true. It should be called transition readiness. That's what it should be called.
Yeah.
And you should have that in your head as a present tense and look to influence that, working on that so you can work in the business over time.
One more from Chris Meso. Go to q5experience.com. Even book an appointment with Chris, even if it's just a conversation. You should talk to this man. He's brilliant. You are the best, sir. Great to share and talk to you. As you said, love chopping it up with you. You know that.
Matt, you are the best, and I love being around you, my man.
Chris Meso, Q5 Experience, T-Rex Advisory, strategic business coach to the stars here on our kind of concept and series of learning from the Q5 experts. More very soon, right here on Success and Success, Q5 Experience Podcast. Find us on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.